30 to 50%. That's how much pipeline disappears in the average B2B organization when they stress test it properly. Now, when I say stress test it properly, I'm not talking about glancing at a dashboard or asking somebody for an update. I'm talking about stress testing it with the frequency and the rigor that's required to get to the truth. And to do that, there are at least 3 things we must be validating every week. The first is, in that deal, are you dealing with the decision maker? The actual decision maker. The next is, what is the next action commit date? And the third one is, when last have we actually validated this opportunity with a client? At the Sales Council, for the last 10 years, we've been turning pipeline into revenue, and revenue into jobs, and jobs into a stronger economy. But here's the thing, at the root of it is pipeline. And it's seldom pipeline itself that's the issue. The real issue is what we're doing with that pipeline, or not doing, as the case may be. Now let's talk about the number that everybody loves to talk about, 3 times coverage. The challenge with that is that we assume that all of the deals in the pipeline are real. We assume that the seller is actually working with a decision maker, not an influencer, not a sponsor, not a coach, a decision maker, somebody who owns the budget, somebody who can issue the purchase order or can sign the contract. It also assumes that there is a committed next action, that we understand exactly what the next step is, and that the close date for that opportunity has been validated by the client. You see, when we say 3.5 times pipeline coverage, in reality, according to CSO Insights, it's more like 1.4. You see, having 3.5 times or 3 times the coverage you need in your pipeline isn't really a strategy, or it's not going to de-risk your pipeline if the deals in that pipeline aren't real. And again, this goes back to the frequency and the rigor with which we're actually inspecting that pipeline. So when we work with organizations, our first action when we're working with pipeline is to validate or disqualify and invalidate whatever's in that pipeline. We want to get to the truth as quickly as possible. And yes, we're going to rebuild that pipeline up to 3 or 3.5x, but we're going to do it with real deals that are live, where we're dealing with real decision makers who've got the authority to sign off the deals. Because when we don't validate what's really in the pipeline, when we're not working with real data, we can fall into a sense of comfort. We have false hope. We're optimistic. And you know, the thing is, the sellers that you're managing and that you're monitoring need to be optimistic. We know that sales is a tough job, so you're dealing with optimists. And part of the role that we bring as managers when we're stress testing the pipeline is to help them to think critically about those opportunities, to help them to de-risk their individual pipelines and of course the organization's pipeline by ensuring that they're engaging with the client with the rigor, with the qualification, and with the proactivity that's required to build real deals in a real pipeline that really move forward and that ultimately result in a deal. I want to talk you through the 4 lies that we regularly uncover inside the pipeline. Now, perhaps lies sounds like a harsh word, and I'm not suggesting for a moment that your sellers are being dishonest. That's not what I'm suggesting. What I am suggesting is that whatever is in that pipeline is not the truth. And if it's not the truth, it's false. And if we're working on false data, well, we're going to end up at a false result. We're going to miss our forecast. So what are these 4 things that we need to inspect frequently and with rigor? First is the close date. Now, the close date in many organizations is effectively set by the rep, and it's forecast for when they need to close it. So what we're doing is we are essentially imposing an external process on our clients because we haven't actually validated that with our clients. You need to ensure that your sellers are regularly validating with their clients when the deal is going to close. What are the implications if that deal doesn't close on time? Is the rep clear on that? And are they regularly communicating that with their client? Because when we do that well, we're really showing our client that we're invested in their outcome, that we've been listening carefully, and that we understand what they need to achieve and by when. Now, if your rep tells you that they're dealing with a decision maker, one decision maker, they're not dealing with the decision makers. They're dealing with one line to a decision-making committee. couple of years ago, according to Gartner, the average B2B buying process had 5.4 decision makers in it. Most recently, Gartner has said that average is closer to 11. I don't know what it looks like in your environment, but what I do know is there are more decision makers involved in B2B transactions and purchasing decisions than ever before in the history of the world. And if reps aren't actively building consensus in that buying committee, that deal could fall apart with little to no warning. The rep is going to be caught off guard. What we need to do is help the rep to think through the decision-making process, whether we know, like, and trust that decision-making process, whether we understand what the buying committee actually looks like, and whether or not they're actively engaging with the stakeholders required and building the consensus they need to get the deal over the line. The next step, I'm waiting to hear back. I sent the proposal. Oh, the customer's not getting back to me. All of those are telltale signs that the rep has lost control of the next step. Now, let me be clear here. We do not, at the Sales Council, talk about dominating the sale, controlling the customers. Look, it's tough enough trying to control yourself. Good luck trying to control anybody else. But as the seller, it is our responsibility to lead. And that means we take ownership for the next step. We help our clients to get to the point where they can make that decision because we're proactively driving the process forward for the clients. Incidentally, an interesting piece of data, also from Gartner, is that buyers are now reporting that the decision-making process is taking twice as long as they thought it would take. And our clients are actually getting to a point of decision fatigue. So the rep's responsibility to reduce friction, move the deal forward, and maintain the momentum is in our clients' best interests. Now, line number 4 is the pipeline stage. You see, very often, or most often, the reps are essentially saying the pipeline stage is what I did the last time. So the pipeline stage, the lead came in. The pipeline stage, we had the discovery meeting. The pipeline stage, we're now designing the proposal. The pipeline stage, we're presenting the proposal. But the pipeline stage needs to align with how your client is buying. We need to work with our clients. We need to match where they are in their buying stage. See, buying is not selling in reverse. And if your seller is not communicating openly with your client or the decision maker, if they don't have the confidence to ask the tough qualification questions, well, firstly, they're not going to be differentiated from your competitors because all things being equal, the actual sales experience is largely the differentiator. So when the rep isn't differentiating themselves by asking those tough questions, what happens is they boost the pipeline with deals that aren't really stress tested, they're not real deals. They're dealing with one individual, they're reporting on what they did last time, and that's what you're filing in the deal notes. And that is not helpful. So let's just summarize and just recap then. What are those 4 things that we actually need to test? The decision maker. Who are they dealing with? Who should they be dealing with? Maybe they need executive sponsorship to get in front of the right stakeholders. But we need to ensure that they are speaking to the buying committee. The next step. What is the next step? Has this been discussed with the client? Are they closing out every meeting with, can we clarify what are the next steps, who's responsible, and by when? And finally, the pipeline stage. Is the pipeline stage a true reflection of where the client is in their buying process? Or is the pipeline stage really a reflection of what the rep has done and where the rep believes the deal is? Remembering that our reps are optimists, and part of our role is to bring that frequency and rigor. When our pipeline stages don't mirror the buying actions, so that might be a business case built internally, that might be a presentation to the board, whatever the case might be, when they're not reflecting the buying process, then we're essentially creating fictional momentum in our pipeline. And that's really dangerous. Now, when we start to get real about what's in the pipeline and we interrogate that, the pipeline gets smaller. And initially, that's really difficult for everybody. The spotlight is on individual contributors. The organization is watching that pipeline. It feels like they're losing something, but we're not really losing anything. Most of us have heard the quote, right? Hope is not a strategy. But it feels good. It feels comforting when we look at the pipeline and there is hope. And when we start to interrogate these deals and the pipeline gets smaller and deals are eliminated, it's uncomfortable for everybody. The spotlight is on individual contributors. The organization kind of collectively holds its breath because it feels like we're losing something, but we're not losing anything. What we're losing is false information. here's the thing. Small and real beats large and fictional every single time. And when we get to that stage, when we realize that our pipeline is nowhere near what we thought it was, well, that then means that the onus is on us to begin to engage in outbound prospecting activity with true rigor, so we can build that pipeline again. But this time with real deals that are qualified with rigor. We're engaging with the true decision makers. We're in charge of that next step. We understand what the implications are for the client, and we're closing those deals in alignment with how the customer wants to buy. So why is this happening so frequently? I mean, if it's a predictable challenge and it's relatively simple for us to uncover that and address it, then why is this something we're encountering so often? Well, there are at least 3 reasons. The first is that many sales managers are promoted because they were exceptional individual contributors. And the thing is, the qualities that made them exceptional individual contributors often actively work against them being great sales managers. Think about it. Your individual contributors, they like autonomy. They don't like to be micromanaged, and often they don't really want to manage anybody else. So that's something for you to consider before you are promoting somebody into that role. But the next question that I have for you is, what have you as an organization done to prepare that individual and equip that individual to be an exceptional sales manager? This is not something that you just kind of pick up. There is a science to this. There is a process and a system. And when you know how it works, it's easy to implement. But when you don't know how it works, it can be exceptionally frustrating for the manager and really demotivating for the sellers reporting to that manager. The second is it feels confrontational to ask the individual contributor or the seller, so when last did you see this customer? Who are you dealing with? What is the commit date? I'm looking at your deal notes and they're not clear. Please update your deal notes. When we're disqualifying deals in their pipeline, it feels uncomfortable because they're on the spotlight, right? But if the sales manager doesn't want to ask the difficult questions of your reps, then how can we expect those same reps to go to the customer and ask the difficult questions of your client that are going to help them to qualify that deal or disqualify the deal? We must demonstrate that behavior inside of our own organization and do that in a way that doesn't leave the contributor feeling embarrassed. And the third is they're not effectively coaching. According to the Sales Managers Institute, managers are spending only 22% of their time on coaching. Now that's a problem. Why? Well, because according to Challenger research, the sweet spot is around 3 to 5 hours of coaching per month. Now think about it. If your manager's got 8 direct reports, that's 24 hours a month. Add to that pipeline reviews, one-on-one pipeline reviews, strategic opportunities, going out to key stakeholder engagements with clients, reporting to your own board. When we put that on the manager, we can see why coaching can fall away so easily. The reality is it's a time architecture problem. And until we solve that, and until we start to acknowledge and reward our sales managers for the behavior we need them to engage with that's going to drive the pipeline forward, they're going to continue to make trade-offs that are going to negatively impact your pipeline and your revenue. The pattern we've discussed today: friction in the pipeline, managers who aren't inspecting, and managers who haven't been equipped with the skills. It's not a failure, it's a gap. And it's the most commercially valuable gap you can close. And that's exactly why we created the Sales Leadership Growth Lab. It's a blended methodology, so your sales managers aren't going to be out of the field for any longer than they can afford. We already know how time poor and stress rich they are. In the Sales Leadership Growth Lab, there's a live masterclass, self-paced learning, but then this is where it becomes real. There is an application challenge. There's a tool, a template, and a process that they take back into your business and apply with your sellers. So right from the very first month, you're going to start to see traction and momentum building. And once they've applied what they've learned inside your organization with your team, they then come back into a group coaching session where they share their learnings and they have the opportunity to engage with their peers, to learn from like-minded sales managers, and to be challenged by their coach. Once this has been applied, we then move on to the next topic. So often we're trying to throw everything at one individual, but most of us don't learn that way. And your sales managers who are stress rich and time poor, well, they also need time to come to grips with the material. And that's why there is one topic every month. And every month it's the same cadence. Masterclass, self-paced learning. Go and apply this in the field and come back with your learnings. If that excites you and you want to know more, please reach out. We'd love the opportunity to find out if we're a good fit. Potentially, we could work together. We'd love to be a part of your success.